Raise some
Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, the time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Welcome, Patriots, back to another edition of the Raising Cain Show. Today, we're going to continue what we've been doing this on Tuesdays. We've been getting back to our West Virginia Hour, in particular, Capital Conversations. And today, we're joined by Senator Darren Thorne of the 15th District to break down legislation from the most recent session. But before we get into that, I'm going to run our commercial breaks now. That way we don't have to have any interruptions. And so stick with us. We got a lot of really exciting stuff to talk about, stuff that even if you're not from West Virginia, you're going to want to hear this, because this is what needs to happen in every state across this country. We'll be right back.
It says, I woke up this morning and looked out the door to a country I don't recognize. They put masks on our face to hide our pain, and there's no fire in most people's eyes. And it's still true today. It's still true today that they've tried to destroy the American spirit. And in some instances, they've done a dadgum good job. But in other instances, they have lit an inferno in some people. And we right now are gathering some of those people that are on freaking fire to save this country.
Increasing expenses have caused us all a lot of pressure these days, and it's affecting even the wealthiest of people. Most have lost their sense of security, stability, and even hope for a strong financial future. The game plan of everyone in your cell phone has likely been disrupted or even hardcore stopped, and most are looking for a creative solution to regain financial momentum. Oftentimes, life's best solutions are the simplest. But first, a question. What is something most people think they should own but don't? Crypto, fine art, real estate? Nope. We are talking about real money. The kind kings and queens fought for and large institutions today buy in mass. We're talking about gold and silver, assets that provide confidence in tough financial situations. So the question is, do you own any? If you don't, you're not alone. Most people aren't maximizing the power of precious metals because it's just been too complicated. And even though they see advertisements about gold and silver daily, they don't really know who to trust. That is, until now. The bottom line is that buying gold and silver doesn't have to be complicated or scary. There's a simple, better way to accumulate assets and create financial peace, headache-free. And this very minute, a new community of average people are seeing above-average results to the tune of tens of millions in assets over the last few years. This system is tested, it's simple, and it's not an experiment. To date, it's helped more than 80,000 people bring hope back into their lives. It's invitation only, and right now, this new community has accepted a challenge to give away as much free gold this year as possible. Curious? Learn how to get your free gold today. Check out the next step to get the details.
Since 2017, 150,000 farms have shut down, and working farmland has been reduced by 21 million acres. The system has been crippling the remaining farmers, forcing some to adopt nefarious farming techniques, like pumping hormones and other performance-enhancing drugs into their cows so they can survive in crammed feedlots. Or the farmers are forced to jump ship and sell to land-hoarding, profit-chasing agricultural oligarchies, who use their billions of dollars to crush the competition and increase your family's dependence on their manufactured food. What could possibly go wrong? The family farm will soon be a thing of the past, unless you do something. You can. That's why there's From the Farm, an industry-disrupting platform that connects consumers directly with local farmers, which means you can buy fresh, non-factory farm food, and you'll know exactly where your food came from and how it was raised. For the first time in nearly 100 years, independent farms will have a way to not only survive, but thrive. From the Farm was founded by A.J. Richards, an active homesteader, and Brooke Entz, a CrossFit Games athlete and an Amazonian warrior in the movies Wonder Woman and Justice League. She clearly has a passion for healthy food and a healthy lifestyle. And since both AJ and Brooke come from generations of ranchers and farmers, they know what they're talking about. We can't do this alone. We need the strength of the American people behind us. Help us build a new food system that combines the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future. Investing in From the Farm isn't just a financial decision. It's an investment into our future, our small family farms, and our food sovereignty. Invest today.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain Show, and I'm pleased to have with me my Senator Darren Thorne of the 15th District, to break down legislation from the most recent session of West Virginia. Also, he is the vice chair of the Agriculture Committee, so I'm sure you're probably interested in that commercial I just ran, and I'd love to talk with you more about that and then what we're trying to do with that, which is, I think, a really good thing. But he is also involved on major economic and financial issues. Senator Thorne has been at the center of policy discussions that affect both urban and rural corners of our state. We're going to talk through some of the bills that passed, proposals still on the table, and where he sees opportunity for real progress. Senator Thorne, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nate, for having me on again. It's been a while. It's been a little over a year now since I've been on your show, and I do appreciate the opportunity to be back on again.
Yeah, so there's so much going on. I mean, this was your first legislative session as a senator, and you've been in the House for for a bit before that. But what was let's start by how was your experience in the Senate? How was it different? And just for those people out there who maybe don't ever get to Charleston or don't really understand what it's like in the halls of the legislature, what is that experience like, and what was the differences between the Senate side versus the House side?
Well, we'll go back to the first day I walked through the doors. It was very humbling, very surreal that you're one of few people that get to this opportunity to serve the public in this capacity, and I always take that serious. Every day I walk into the Capitol, I look up at that Golden Dome. It's again, it's a humbling experience. The differences in the Senate and the House, the Senate only has 34 of us. So that obviously makes a big difference. You have a bigger voice, and that was what I was wanting when I went into this. I had a hard time putting my name in for the appointment because you're nervous. You don't know what to expect or how this is going to go down. But I was fortunate enough to get that appointment, and being a senator versus a delegate, again, it comes down to you're 1 in 34. So you have that opportunity to have your voice heard. When nothing against the speaker, but he's got 99 people over there to try to keep together, and that's tough to try to try to keep that going. On the Senate side, you've only got, the president only has 33, and it was good. It really was. We held it together. We was a good. We get along good in the Senate. Now, obviously, we've had our disagreements. Everybody does, but it's all about relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how we get things done here in Charleston. It's if you're here just blowing it all up, you don't get hurt as much, and it's about relationships, and we've become a big family. And I didn't understand that when I first got down here, but today, it's true. We get good relationships. You feel like family, and during the off time, you do miss your colleagues.
Yeah. Now, you in your day job, you run a farm. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you bring to Charleston that might be different than some of your colleagues.
So I'll go all the way back. I've lived a pretty, what I would call a pretty full life. I've never done anything spectacular, but I grew up with a single mother. I was we what today we would call a homestead farm. We didn't have a whole lot, but we had a few things. And I spent most of my adult career trucking and farming. We would farm when we could, and my kids grew up fast and learning how to run the farm because I was gone anywhere from 250 days a year for about 28 years.
Wow.
So that was the biggest part of my life. So the only two real things I know in life is trucks and farms. And today I'm very fortunate and blessed that I get to farm with my family. My son is the day-to-day guy. If it wasn't for him, I would never be able to be, doing what I'm doing today and serve the people. So it's stressful. Farming is one of those jobs that's sometimes you don't get the recognition that you should. I think, and the challenge in Charleston is, when I got to Charleston, I thought for sure we would have some farmers down here, but and I get, I offend people when I say that there's people that farm. I'm not saying that they don't, but the difference in their farming and my farming is if I don't make a profit of some sort, we go bankrupt. We don't have a second income to try to help us through, where most people are making their mortgages with their day jobs and then they farm on the side. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's the difference in the way I look at farming and what most people in Charleston see it as. So I take it a lot more serious than most down here.
Yeah,
and I'm in Charleston for the day, so that's why I keep saying down here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate, you've had obviously a very busy day, and yet you've taken this time out of your schedule to talk with me and with our audience. One of the things that I've always thought about with farmers is, you see all these biblical references to farming, and I've known many farmers, and every single one of them that I've met is somebody that has a lot of faith. I mean, you have to, in order to be able to survive, because you're dependent upon things that you have no control over. And in the city and in the the technical world that that I live in and that I work in most of the time, people tend to forget that they tend to forget about those things that we don't have control over. And there's this assumption that our lives are very controlled, but it's all really it's all a myth. The truth is we don't really control anything, and it is in God's hands. And so I've learned that in my life, and I know that you have that in yours as well. That's one of the things that I appreciate about you is your understanding for the needs of your community. So I want to get into that because there's some really interesting legislation that you guys passed and that you're working on. So tell me about the most consequential pieces of legislation that passed this session from your point of view.
I'm going to have to start with 2014, our bill 2014, which was the microgrid bill. That bill will probably make the biggest impact in the state of West Virginia. And from what I'm understanding, that legislation is now being considered in, states like Texas. So we have, we're the pioneers of this. And I just this week heard Donald Trump talking about microgrids. And I hadn't heard him mention them before West Virginia passed this law. So I think, we've done some good legislation. We passed DEI, an anti-DEI bill and things like that. But those are all social issues. Those are great. But as far as the impact on the state, I think these microgrids and data centers will make the biggest impact on our future.
For those that are listening that may not understand what the senator's talking about, let me give you kind of a basic breakdown of this. Think about it like this. Right now, whenever we generate electricity, that gets pumped into the national grid. And the problem with that is that while right now we've got a great energy policy under the Trump administration, for the last 4 years, we had the Biden administration, which was basically anti-oil and gas, anti-coal. They basically were pushing all this green energy nonsense, which green energy, regardless, which I don't even think it's green, but even if you did believe it was green, it only produces a tiny little fraction of the actual power that is needed just to be able to survive, let alone grow and expand. And be able to do things like have data centers and AI. So what has happened is our legislature wisely decided, you know what, we need to have the ability to entice, data centers and these businesses to come to West Virginia and build. And what we will do is we'll create a mini grid, in a sense, just for them. It's a beautiful idea. It's something that actually, when I was running for Congress, it was something that I was talking about and suggesting, because I remember, thinking back then when we were still dealing with the Biden administration, and I would hear people say, well, we just can't start up these coal-fired plants, or we can't build a coal-fired plant because we got to get all these permits and everything from, the Biden administration. Well, now none of that matters, because when you have your own power grid that's not tied into the national grid, the federal government doesn't have any jurisdiction over it. And so it is it's something that we get to basically chart our own path, chart our own future. And the fact is that under the America First policies, we are moving things back to the United States. And one of those things that we are moving here are data centers. And this is an imperative for all national security matters, which includes all of our critical infrastructure. So when you think about, I'll give you an example. So when you think about, for example, a company that produces, say, microchips, all right, most of the microchips in the world, or semiconductors as they call them, are made in China. And you have a few other countries that also produce them. But what the problem is that we got to move all of that stuff here. Data centers, so you think of like Amazon Web Services, people would automatically assume that Amazon Web Services data centers are in the US, but that's not necessarily the case. They're all over the world. And oftentimes when you're buying basically space on Amazon Web Services, you might be buying it in a foreign country. Well, that's a problem if you're dealing with a national security issue. So there's going to be a massive need for data centers in the US. And with AI requires a massive amount of energy, a massive amount of computing power. And believe me, for those that think that AI is something that we don't want, I disagree. I do think that we got to be careful. I do think that we need to take precautions. But the fact is that not only is AI moving forward with or without us, it better be with us, because our enemies, they're developing AI. And AI has the potential to do a lot of great things. It also has the potential to cause some, disruptions as well. But those are things that we can work out. But we have the ability here in West Virginia, because of our supply of natural gas, because of our supply of coal, we have the ability to build these power plants that can power these data centers, especially the ones, like I said, that are doing AI. And what's unique about that, people might think, well, what are we don't have a huge amount of people that know IT in West Virginia, but you don't need that. See, that's the beauty of it, because like even with me and my job, I work remotely. So people from all over the country, even all over the world, could essentially be working here, but without having to be here. And here's the thing, all of those data centers are going to need HVAC people. They're going to need people that do maintenance on the building. It's going to create construction jobs. It's going to create jobs that have to do with the managing and maintaining the power on these power plants. All of these services, jobs that are related to the building of these things, it's going to be massive boom for West Virginia. And we're the first state, in my understanding, to pass this. So we are positioned in a much better place. And it has a lot to do with people like you and the other Republicans that voted for this bill. Now, there were some problems, right? And my understanding is this was a tough bill to get passed. Explain that and tell me what happened with that.
Yes, it was. We debated this bill the whole session. We come right down to the last day. We debated, we compromised, what it came down to at the beginning was these data centers were going to be able to come into a county, and then the county was not going to get any revenue directly from it. So that was the rub that our county commissioners had, and some of our senators, and I understood that rub, but what I think some folks were missing in that was like this, our southern counties they're digging the coal, but Hampshire County and the Eastern Panhandle, the Northern Panhandle, people that don't have the coal, they are getting as part of the severance. So they're still getting some of that revenue where our counties weren't wanting that at all, right? There were certain counties that weren't wanting any money to go to the governor, if you will. So that was the biggest rub, but it come down to, we did compromise. We negotiated. We've got it down to 50%. We'll go to of the revenue will go to PIT, which is personal income tax. So that'll be put into a fund to when we can, as we can draw that down and get rid of our personal income tax as a state. 30% will go directly right back to the county that holds the data center. And then 10% will be divided among the other 55 counties, sort of like a severance. And the other 10%, I believe, this is the one I always get hung up on, but I believe it's goes back into the infrastructure. So those was the negotiating. That was the problems through the whole the whole session, but we all come together. I think we got a good bill. I think it's, again, like we said before, this is going to be, I think it's going to be a game changer for West Virginia, where, I'm having conversations in my district, especially in my home county. We are not a coal county. We're not a natural gas county. We don't have these, in the abundance that a lot of other counties do. We have a little bit of natural gas, but not a whole lot. So I don't know if we had the volume to run a data center microgrid. I don't know that. But we do have the transmission lines that's going to be coming through the county. And I believe that we can benefit from those with a data center, right? I think that would help our county. And just to give the folks an idea of what a data center brings as far as revenue to a county is tremendous. We can't comprehend. And that's what changed my mind. At the beginning, I was like, man, I'm just this way out there. I don't understand, or I don't agree. But as you start looking into what this brings as a state into our counties is unbelievable. So one data center could bring as much as $30 million to the county. So approximately 150 million to the state. That's one data center. So that's huge, right? I mean, that's think about what $30 million could do to Hampshire County, Morgan County, Grant County, Tucker, all these counties that have very little revenue streams. This is huge. This could get rid of our EMS fees. This could prop up our EMS, give us give us more revenue for our volunteer fire departments. There's so much that this could do. I'm trying to get folks to understand that this could be a good thing for the state. And like you had mentioned before, it doesn't bring a whole lot of people to us that will change our cultures.
Right.
But it'll bring a revenue stream that will be unlike anything else.
And it will create those service jobs for,
right.
for all the welding, all the construction, all of the HVAC, all of that stuff is massively needed. Here's the thing I got some really great questions that are popping up here in the chat, and I want to address some of these real quick here. So
I'll try.
One is I'm going to bring this up here real quick here. So I'm concerned about the use of our water with data centers. What do you think? And Senator, I'll let you answer that question first, but I've got some information on that I can provide as well. I've got a background in cyber and in IT, and I've been doing this for 27 years, and I've worked on some major projects having to do with data centers. So I do have a little bit of knowledge in this, but have you guys talked about that and the need for water for these data centers?
Yeah, so that was my concern. I had a concern for water consumption. So what I'm understanding, and again, you can add to this if I'm wrong or if they're telling me wrong, because I'm just going by what folks are telling me. I'm not an expert. But we have, what I like to explain to folks is you have two types right now. You have one where the water will come through a radiator type thing to cool these things, but it'll go right out the other end and it'll be clean, filtered water. It's not really using it. Now, I'm not going to argue that there won't be some evaporation or whatever, and you'll lose a little bit, but it's not like you're taking millions of gallons of water and throwing it away. The next one will be a closed loop system, just like your radiator in your car, where that just goes through and just continues to cycle through to cool these things. So once those things was explained to me, if this is true, this is, to me, I don't see it being a big issue for our water tables.
Yeah, no, and you're absolutely correct. So yes, data centers do use significant amounts of water, primarily for cooling systems to manage heat generated by servers, and it's a massive amount of heat because you're talking about a lot of processing power. The exact amount varies based on the data center size, design, and cooling technology, and also location. So right now we got a lot of data centers have been put out in deserts and places that are arid, and it gets very hot there, and so they require a ton of water in order to keep those things cool. And in a desert where there's not a lot of water to begin with, it has caused some problems. But on average, a large data center can consume millions of gallons of water annually. Some estimates suggest about 100,000 to 1 million gallons per day for hyperscale facilities. And this is comparable, to the water usage of a small town. For example, Google's data center, which used about 4.3 billion gallons of water globally in 2022. But here's the thing. Because these problems have already existed and they've already been a problem, they've already started working on solutions for this. So water is used in cooling towers where it evaporates and dissipates, but there's also things that are being done to not have to use those types of technologies. And one of those things is they've also done things where they've created these closed loop systems. And closed loop systems, basically, they're newer facilities that are adopting water efficient technologies like air cooling. And they do things like it reduces the consumption significantly. The location, and like I mentioned, the location also majorly matters. So data centers in water scarce regions can strain local resources, but not here. I mean, this is not, I do not foresee that this will be an issue here. Now, that said, obviously there's going to need to be some planning and things like that done for these types of centers. But to your point and what you were saying, I think the technology that we have nowadays, especially with closed loop systems, it's not anything like it used to be. So a lot of the concerns, for massive amounts of water consumption, I think, I don't think it will be as much of an issue here. And they're even, and I guarantee you, we're going to see even newer technologies that are going to come out, to deal with this kind of thing, including in these closed loop systems using certain elements and things like that that actually help that water to stay cooler for longer periods of time. It's kind of the same thing they do right now for nuclear power plants, for example, to cool off the rods and things like that. So we're going to see all kinds of really cool technologies that are going to develop out of this, and it's happening pretty rapidly. So I hope that answers your question on that. Now, one of the concerns also that was also brought up by the same person in the chat was about contamination and worries about that with living on the river. And I can tell you this is a much safer situation than some of the other things that we've seen done, and that I was not necessarily for, and on the Ohio River, where they made massive exemptions on pollution controls and things like that. And I think you know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
I was really disturbed when I started digging into the deal that was made for Form Energy, for example. There was environmental controls that were basically loosened, and then there was a lot of lobbying that went on, and things like that, to make that deal happen. And so far, I haven't necessarily seen anything really all that great come out of that. But this is a totally different story, because this is proven technology. This isn't some pipe dream about what we think might be able to happen. No, this is actually already happening around the world. And we have an opportunity to be a state that becomes very attractive for companies like Google and Amazon and Oracle to build data centers here.
Yeah, and these things don't have to sit on the side. They don't have to be on a river bottom. They can sit on top of a mountain in a brownfield on a reclaimed mine site, or something that we're not using now anyway. So that to me is good business.
Yeah.
Use the. I mean. But and I've had to do it, to open your mind and let's have the conversation. And West Virginia's hard about making those conversations. We tend to, and I was that guy before I become a senator or a delegate. It was just no all the time. We don't want this. It's going to change us. But I think we're getting into and Nate, I'd like to, we're coming into, you'd mentioned this a little bit about China and national security. And, this is this generation's AI and data centers is this generation's race to the moon. Right. So this is big. Mine and your generation is the last generation to know what it's like to not have a cell phone, right? To not walk around with a phone in your pocket all the time.
Yep.
My grandkids, I've got a 2-year-old granddaughter and just a couple of month-old grandson, and they'll never understand life without AI. So, you go back to the 1900s, right? Let's go back to the turn of the century. It's the 1900s when the first car started rolling through New York City, and people thought, man, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen, right? Because there's a horse for every 3 people, or there's you'll never put the horse out. That's been thousands of years. Well,
Yep.
Look today, horses are obsolete. The internet, right? In the 1990s, I laughed at the internet. It was like, well, this is a silly concept, right? My gosh, look where it's at now. And with that, with AI too, we fought hard with the internet to keep it owned by America, right? We want Americans to have control of that. If we do not win this race and China gets control of AI and they beat us to this, war will never be the same. No matter what, whoever gets it, war will never be the same. But China will be fighting with an M16 and we'll be back here with a musket. We'll be
That's
annihilated,
absolutely
right?
correct.
This is
You know,
beyond our comprehension.
it really is. And listen, most of my career has been with the Defense Department. So I've got a really, really strong background on this. And the supply chain risk that we have from China is enormous. So this is why Trump has been so strong on China, because we have to bring a lot of this back to the US. And it's not just technology, but it's, medicine. Right now, most of our medicines are made in China. Who knows, how many risks that we have. It's almost incomprehensible what we've allowed to happen in this world. And there are a lot of good reasons. I've heard a lot of debates from an economic standpoint about why it's good to have, globalization and, and being able to buy products for cheaper from other countries and all of that. That's fine from an economic standpoint, but that doesn't answer the national security issue. It never will. So as long as we have, countries that are adversarial, we have to have certain things, certain industries have got to be maintained here in the United States. And AI is absolutely one of those, because it is a strategic, it is a strategic industry that has major impacts on warfare and a lot of other things too. I want to just real quickly go down a list here. I pulled up a list of just the types of jobs that are created by the development of a data center. You've got during the construction phase, you have construction workers, civil engineers, project managers, architects, environmental consultants, heavy equipment operators. During the operational phase, you've got data center technicians, network engineers, systems administrators, facility managers, security personnel, sustainability specialists, IT support staff. Now, a lot of that can be outsourced because of the way that we work in the IT world today. But there's also major economic ripple effects. So think about this, like all the local service jobs for maintenance you got catering, you've got housing, you got food, all the different things but also the transportation during the construction, everything that's brought in there. The supply chain roles are even bigger, especially when it comes to, in this case, with these mini grids, right? We're talking about we're going to need more coal. We're going to need more gas. That's going to open up more jobs in those fields where we already have a lot of people that have knowledge and have training. And, I was shocked. I had no idea, because I didn't grow up in West Virginia. And so I didn't know a whole lot about coal mining jobs, but those are some of the best paid jobs for people without a college education. And it's amazing. You got people making six figures.
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
that's the difference between somebody being able to, to have being able to own a home and have the ability to send their kid to college and things like that. So it is a great opportunity for us. And I'm really excited about it, because I really do see the potential here. And the biggest concern that I hear people talking about when I've talked about these types of things before is, look, we don't want a bunch of, left-wing liberals moving into our state. And I 100% agree. I don't want a bunch of left-wing liberals moving here either. But the beauty of a data center is most of the jobs that are going to be created by it locally are the kind of jobs that people who are already here are fit and ready and trained and know how to do. Correct. Those IT jobs that will be created by it, certainly some people, may create some jobs here for that, but a lot of those jobs are going to be remote. I mean, that's just the way it is today.
And we could train our own kids to do the ITs, but that doesn't mean that we can't keep our own.
That's right. That's the other thing too. Why are we seeing kids leaving our state? Because there is no opportunities. And that's the thing. We need to be able to create an environment where they have those opportunities. And I think that would be a really good thing. Yeah. So there was another bill that you're working on, and I want you to talk about that, because that's another one that kind of excites me. It's a different type of bill, but it has to do with agriculture. And tell me about, I can't remember the name for it, but the other bill that you were mentioning, that you were down there talking to Ag Commissioner about.
Oh, so, well, this wasn't a bill. This is not a bill. This is
Okay.
just a project that we're trying to get started in the state of West Virginia. We're calling it BRAG. So BRAG will stand for Biodynamic Regeneration in Agriculture. So what we're trying to do here is change the world. Basically, this is, again, farmers have to think outside of our natural, or what we normally think of as farming, as far as pesticides, herbicides, and how we treat our soil. I've been in lots of conversations with folks from all over the world that's interested in this kind of initiative, that we could use the state of West Virginia as a let's just say a research and development state in biodynamic regeneration, using microorganisms to regenerate your soil. We are right now, we're testing. We have a test plot in Prunytown, West Virginia, just outside of Bridgeport, on the Department of Agriculture farm over there that's by the jail, the prison. So that consists of a couple acres that we have divided in half, and we're putting some tests, some biologics on half of that field, and leaving the other one the way it was, and not doing anything to it. And over the summer, we'll take soil samples, and every 30 days we'll spray some of this stuff on it, and see what we can come up with. But what I'm understanding, and I'm not a scientist, but from having these discussions and talking to folks, what's happening is we're getting nitrogen, and we're getting our pHs. Our land soils are getting locked, so basically getting hard. So it's holding all that good stuff in, and then we just add more on top of it. So we're not doing our ground any good with the way we're doing agriculture. So what we can do is we can use these biologics to release these nitrogen that's already in the ground, pH levels, whatever. We can control that with these microorganisms, these living organisms that God gave us. I really believe that God's given us everything we need to farm without chemicals. So the bad part of what's happening in America, and then probably the world, but I only know of what's happening really here. We're losing honeybees at an alarming rate. I don't know if anybody's paying much attention to that. I've been having some conversations with some bee people, and they are concerned. I've got a guy just in Hardy County, just down the road from me, that had 1,200 hives a year ago. He's down to 80. So the only thing that we can come up with, and this is very unpopular. The feds don't want you talking about this because of big chemical, but we're just going to talk about it. We're spraying pesticides, we're spraying herbicides, we're killing bees, we're killing pollinators, and it doesn't matter if it's a honeybee or a bumblebee, whatever pollinates, we're killing it. And without pollinators, humans don't exist. So this is a very important project, I believe, that we can do. And again, I'm talking to people all over the world that's into this. And it's not just, it doesn't stop with just the chemistry. It goes into anything to do with agriculture. So I'm having a conversation right now with a company out of New York that builds these. So they'll put the roof systems over football stadiums, right? So they're interested in coming in and getting into the agriculture part, so they could build maybe greenhouses. I don't know. Then I had a guy come to my farm last Saturday or Saturday before, can't remember, from Italy. Flew all the way in from Italy to look at Hampshire County in West Virginia about bringing in a manufacturing plant for what in the chicken industry that I'm in would be a medicator pump, is what we call a medicator pump, but it's a dosing pump. So they would come here from from Italy, move that company here to build these. And the reason that they're interested in it is because this all goes together with technology. So their company will use AI and robotics mostly to build these pumps. So that's another conversation for another day, because that gets into scary stuff like what are we going to do for jobs, one day. But these are all things that we need to think about, talk about, and this is the kind of things that Bragg wants to bring to the state of West Virginia. My conversation that I was here today on was for laboratory. The Department of Agriculture needs a laboratory. We need to be able to do, we need to be able to make these tests, right? Do tests and all this research that we're not able to do because we don't have the right facility.
Right. We don't want to be dependent on the feds for this kind of stuff.
Well, the feds, you're right. We don't want the feds. We don't want the universities. We are talking to West Virginia State University about teaming up with them. They're open to this. They're okay. But let's, we have other colleges and universities in the country that are bought by big ag and don't want this kind of technology because it will hurt their bottom dollar. Just like big pharma, right? They're always going to push back if something's going to cure something. So, this is dangerous territory that we're going into to try to do better and have better, safer food. The forever plastics,
that's a
that
huge
we're
problem.
using in agriculture is now being found in cattle. We're finding it in cattle. We're finding it in, I don't know if we're human sperm. Sorry, but we're finding, because of what we're using, we're attaching chemicals to forever plastics to put them on our fields so that nitrogen or whatever that we're using is coming out at a slower pace. So this is not good stuff, and we can use other means to fertilize our fields, to make our crops grow better.
Absolutely. I had a guest on my show a while back with a company called Wriggle Brew, and they've got a very interesting process. Basically it uses biologics. It uses natural bacteria that are found in soil that are necessary for soil to maintain good health. And it's that is combined with like worm castings and things like that, and they're having like amazing results with this stuff. And he sent me a bottle of it, and I sprayed it on my house plants that oftentimes don't get enough nutrition because they're in a pot. And it was amazing. Like just it started causing more shoots and more leaves and buds and things like that to grow. And it was amazing. But they are doing this on a commercial scale now. And I was talking to them, trying to introduce them to Kent Leonhardt to get them together so that, because they said they would be interested in moving their operation from Florida, possibly to West Virginia. And that's the kind of thing that, I think would be awesome to get them connected with you as well in this Bragg program. There's another guy that I talked to, and it goes beyond agriculture too, because we have major problems with water pollution in certain parts of our state, right? Hayden City, West Virginia has one of the worst, disasters in terms of their water there. They have tetrachloroethylene at levels that far exceed safety. And there's been multiple cases of people getting all different kinds of cancers and things like that there and having all kinds of health problems. You had... and there's not a whole lot that can be done for this because it's in the aquifer. However, there's a company, and I was talking to them when I was running, and I still have their contact information and need to connect them, with the right people. But they have a process that they've developed over the years that uses enzymes, natural enzymes that they can inject into the soil, and it will actually follow the trail of the tetrachloroethylene. They eat the tetrachloroethylene, and then they turn it into I think it's oh gosh, what is it? Some other type of chemical. I can't remember off the top of my head, but they'll turn it into another chemical, and then they inject a different enzyme that then turns that into chlorine and water, and then eventually they break that down. And so what you end up with is clean water again. and all done by these enzymes that once they run out of whatever the food sources that they're kind of designed for, they die. And they so it is a completely safe way of cleaning up these forever chemicals, which we've got problems with that all over the state. And by the way, the plastics, the microplastics, this is really interesting. So that company that I was telling you about, they've got a project that they're working on where they have developed earthworms that have special enzymes that have been, basically that, they have them in their gut that will break down plastics. And so they can actually utilize these earthworms to help break down these microplastics in the soil. So these are the kinds of things, like it sounds like science fiction, and it really is, but it's amazing. And we are coming up with ways of being able to solve some of these problems. And so I'm definitely going to connect you with them because maybe they've got, a role to play here. And
definitely, we're welcoming everybody, because this takes West Virginia from the worst state in pollution. And we don't have smog and that type of pollution, but we've not done ourselves very good when it comes to the coal fields. So, but we can change that. We can mine, and we can clean some of this stuff up, and we'll welcome everybody. And look what that does for West Virginia. Again, that puts us on the map.
Speaking of which, that was something else that just recently passed. I remember seeing something about it in the news, and I did not get a chance to read the article fully, but the headline had something to do with the governor signing a new bill that basically improves the way that we do, oil and gas mining and or drilling, to make it safer, make it cleaner. And do you know much about that?
Sorry, that I don't. That doesn't.
Okay, that's all right. There was how many bills total did you guys end up passing? Well,
we passed somewhere around 250 or 260 bills, and read thousands. So it's hard to do to keep up with all of them, and that one doesn't.
Yeah, I'll have to see if I can find. Yeah, I'm trying to get. I'd like to get Morrissey on the show, and to talk about some of those things too, because I know that this has been a good working relationship with him and the current legislation. And I think we've got some great things happening in the state. So I'm really excited by it. You on the finance committee, you guys took up some big debates there. Where actually, before we move on to that, I want to ask you something, because this was two different people brought this up in the chat, and I'm curious about it too. Where does West Virginia stand on the issue of all of this cloud seeding that's been going on? And look, people call it chemtrails, whatever you want to call it, geoengineering. It is real, 100%. I know for a fact it is. I worked for the government and read the reports long before I could even talk about it. I was reading the reports of what they were doing, and they've been doing cloud seeding, geoengineering, all this other nonsense. A lot of it was tied to the whole climate change, initiative. You had Bill Gates that was funding some of it, basically spraying silver oxide into the atmosphere to reflect the rays of the sun back. It's just ridiculous stuff. Where do we stand on this? Because as far as I'm concerned, they're polluting our air when they do that.
Yeah, you're right. And from what I'm understanding, this goes all the way back to the 1950s, right? We've been cloud seeding since the 1950s.
That's right.
So we're very concerned about it as a state, as a legislature. But the problem is once you get over 400 feet, I believe it is, that's FAA space, we really don't have the jurisdiction to stop it, right? There's not really, I don't know how we could stop it as a state to say, hey, you can't do this over state. I've heard that there's other states that's doing it, but I don't know how you enforce that because it's a federal airspace.
I wonder if this would be maybe a question better answered by our state's attorney general, because I do think that lawsuits need to be brought by the states against the federal government for this.
Yes, right. As far as legislation, I don't see how we can do it, but I think you're onto something there. the attorney general should be the one fighting for this stuff. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So I want to move back onto the finance committee. So you guys took up some big debates there. Where do you stand on key budget items or tax related legislation?
Specific? Do you have so as far as, well, taxes, I don't like taxes.
Okay, so I know everybody hates taxes.
Yeah.
So there's been some discussion surrounding, we've got, I know that one of the initiatives that Morrissey had brought up was this, gosh, what the heck did he call it? Basically, we want to be more attractive in a better state than all of the surrounding, states that surround us.
Oh yeah. What do they call it at the football games?
Yeah. I can't remember the term.
Yeah. I'm not a sports fan, but yeah, it's brawl or something, some brawl, right?
Yeah. Brawl, yeah, exactly. Something about a brawl. But the point is that we want to have a more attractive, tax policy than our, we want to be able to attract businesses, but also we want people to move here. And if people are getting, dinged, like I can tell you as a small business, it's ridiculous the amount of taxes that the federal government takes from me, let alone the state. So how do we fix that?
I think we're on our way, but so we gotta look at this in a bigger picture, or at least this is how I try to explain it at home. We have a $5 billion, we collect $5 billion of tax revenue for the state a year. We take $14 billion from the government, or the federal government, right? To bring our taxes down, we got to bring business in. If when we spread this out, it gets cheaper on all of us. I'm not saying that we can't have any taxes or shouldn't have any taxes, because we still have to run government efficiently, and there's some things that government has to do, right? That they're, by Constitution, they have to do. Even our federal government, that's what they're supposed to do. But the state of West Virginia, again, we take and we take and we take, and we're taxed to death because we don't have business in here helping us soften that burden as an individual. I think that we can. I think we need to be more pro-business. We need to deregulate. We need to our personal income tax. I think that draws people to our state, businesses to our state, to where they say, okay, our people will have more to spend into the economy. So all of these things I think we're doing, but we have to be smart about it. We can't just cut it off at the knees, and then expect us to be able to survive. So it's a slow process.
We've seen some pretty big strides in terms of reducing our income taxes, for example, in this state. And I'd like to see us become a no income tax state. And I realize that, that we got to find that revenue somewhere else. I think, honestly, this mini grid proposal is right there, one of the big things that can help us get there. And maybe that's the selling point to a lot of folks that are still resistant to it is, look, would you like to see West Virginia be an income tax state, a free state? Well, this is how we get there. We've got to do things like that.
Yeah, Tennessee is they have no income tax. Tennessee is our closest state to us that doesn't, from what I understand. So, but they have a lot of big cities, right? They got Nashville, they got Knoxville, they got all these cities that help generate enough revenue that they can do that. West Virginia has none of that, and as a West Virginian, I don't want that, right? So as West Virginians, we don't want a big city to control what we do. So you're exactly right. That's why 50% of our data center and microgrid taxes are going towards personal income tax. That takes it away, and in a short amount of time.
Yeah, and we may see. I think we may end up seeing even bigger gains than what they're predicting, based on what I believe is happening in the industry.
I agree. Indirectly too. There's a lot of stuff that will come indirectly. Yep. Yeah.
Infrastructure, broadband are constantly on the radar. Any progress made in those areas? I mean, I'll tell you, that's one of the things that drives me nuts. I live I live in a pretty affluent area of Martinsburg. Okay. And I bought this house, didn't even think to ask if there was internet. And
Oh, really?
I get to closing, and I asked at closing, like, "Oh, who's the internet service provider?" And they go, "Oh, we don't have one." I'm like, "What? What? How much money am I spending on this house and there's no internet? Are you kidding me? I mean, I depend on it for my job." And this is the truth of it is that a lot of industry depends on it. So it's not just a matter for people's personal ability to, to have internet, but for companies that are coming here, they've got to have internet. So what are we doing to fix that problem? Because there are a lot of areas that are not covered. We can't seem to get, like, I had my neighbor who offered to pay $30,000 to Verizon to put Fios in. And, and he's a wealthy man, has got, a few different businesses. He was willing to pay it out of his own pocket, and because that's what they said. And then after they did their survey, they said, we don't see enough people that, to make it worth it. What happened to all this federal money that was supposed to pay for internet for, rural areas? So that's one thing I'd like to see, fixed in our state.
Yeah, because as far as I'm understanding, that's supposed to be there. Now, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty certain. Even Hampshire County, we're getting internet where internet's not been, right. I mean, one of my farms has no. We don't even have cell phone. I'd rather have the cell phone than the internet. We still have no cell phone, but we are getting some internet.
Yeah, there's a lot of places with no cell phone. In fact,
yes.
When I was driving all over the state, there were places where I thought to myself, I sure hope I don't break down because nobody will find me. I was from hollers,
Yeah, and that's an easy one, right? I don't understand why we don't have cell phones, and they've been around for a long time, so I don't get it. That aggravates me more than the internet. But I know that we have delegates and senators that is their main concern, and they're working on it daily.
Well,
I don't
connect me
understand
with those guys because I'd love to help, fight for that issue. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I think we need to do in our state is kind of perfect for it. We need to cut a deal with Elon Musk for
Yeah.
Starlink. And
I think we should have done that at the beginning instead of spending hundreds of billions of dollars on something that's probably going to be obsolete in 5 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in fact, I mean, so the big challenge with laying fiber right all across our state is we're known as the mountain state. There is very few places where you have level, flat land, and that means that running, the amount of Fios, cable needed to run from one place to another gets exponentially more expensive.
And you still got your stubborn West Virginians that won't let you go across their land either. So we have those points.
So that's where I think satellite, low Earth orbit satellite. I was thankfully, thank God, I was able to get Starlink on the beta program. So I was like the first person, man, my neighbors were pissed at me, but somehow, and I don't know how, but somehow I ended up getting on the list. And because I think I just knew about it. So I signed up, I was like one of the first people to sign up for it. And I was able to get it. And it's great. I mean, I get, 120 megs download speeds, no problem. I'm running this from my basement bunker,
Yeah. That Delegate Rick Hillenbrand, he was into that early too. Before they started running the fiber, and he thought he thinks it's great, and that's his thing. IT is his.
All right, well, I'll talk with him about it. I know him really well, so that would be a good. I'd be happy to to help get that discussion going too, because I think making a deal with Starlink for our state would be something that would also help, I think, revolutionize for the people that are here and the people that want it, and just to have the ability to be able to connect and run a business and things like that.
Agreed.
Yep. Awesome. Well, we've I don't want to take any more of your time, and I really appreciate you being on here with me. And I always like to ask my my guests. We've talked about a lot of different things, but is there anything that we've talked about that you just feel like is so important that you want to get across to people, that you want people to take away from our conversation?
Yeah. I guess that we have to go back to, well, both of the big subjects that we talked about. The agriculture is huge. Don't forget, food security is national security, and we forget that. We're not, you know, farming and where our food comes is second in our mind, third in our mind, way back there, right? We go to Food Line or Piggly Wiggly or wherever, and we get our groceries. I want people to understand that we need to have safer food. Our big packers are destroying our country. They're controlling our food. China and Brazil, it could be dangerous one day. Also, I'd like for people to understand that, and I don't know if anybody back in I hope people in my district are listening. I would ask that we open our minds to these data centers, open our minds to these. I know that the people that are affected, their land is affected by these transmission lines that are going through our counties. I know that they're affected. I know that it's an emotional process, but let's try to understand that this is good for our nation. This is like the interstate highway, and when we first started the interstate highway for commerce, right? This is what connected our country. This is what give us the ability to move product. And that's basically what we're doing with a transmission line. And it's our future. Might not be my future. I might be dead and gone before we ever use it to the best of our ability. But my grandchildren will absolutely rely on AI. And that's going to be the future, whether I like it or not. Like going back to the horse and the buggy, right? Those people couldn't understand that. My granddad was born in 1896, died in 1975. Think about the changes he's seen. You know, we are there. And I just want folks to try to understand that I'm not in bed with these companies. I'm here for West Virginia and my county. And I appreciate you having me on today, Nate. I hope we can do it again.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I thank you for coming on and taking some time out of your busy schedule to do this. This is so important, not just for people in West Virginia, but people all over the country. It's really, really important. Listen, folks, your state representatives, your state senators, those are the people who actually can make a difference in your life. And that's the thing that I don't think a lot of people understand. You know, we worry about a lot of the national races. We worry about, the congressional races, the president and all of that. And certainly they have an important role to play. But just as importantly as what happens locally, that's why it's important that we know who our state legislators are. It's important that we know, who's on our county, boards, who are our school board. Most people have no idea who's teaching and indoctrinating your kids. So important. We've got to understand and know who these people are. And if you're not satisfied with what you see, then run. Give up that time. Make that sacrifice. Senator Thorne, thank you for your sacrifice to our state and to the district that I live in. I really appreciate it. And I'm actually was excited when I heard that you were being appointed as my senator because I liked you when you weren't, in my district as a representative, but now as a senator, you are my senator. So it's awesome. And I think I have the two best senators, between you and Tom Willis, who I just had on, I think it was either last week or the week before, but you guys are a great team. You come from two different worlds. You have strengths in different areas. And I think you make a great team. So I'm really excited about the future for our district and as well as for our state. I always like to close in prayer. I recognize that the importance that, we do what we can, but there's a lot that's not in our control. Like I mentioned at the beginning, and that's where we ask for his assistance and for his providence. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for Senator Darren Thorne and for his service to this state and to this district. And I pray, God, your blessing over him and his family and his farm and over the endeavors that he is taking up in Charleston to try to help this state. I pray that you would guide him along with all of the other senators and legislators and in our all three branches, Lord, of our government at the state level and at the federal level. I just pray your blessing over them all, God, and help them to be wise and make decisions that are wise and in the best interest of the people of West Virginia, Lord. I also pray, God, that you would please help those that are not able to see the vision of what West Virginia could be. Help them to see it. And if they have legit concerns, Lord, help there to be listening ears and for us to find compromises and solutions that will serve everybody's needs. Lord, I pray that you would continue to bless our state, especially as we become more and more free. I pray that you would help us to, with that liberty, Lord, that we would use that freedom to do great things for our state and for our country. And we just ask for your overall blessing in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, Darren, where can people reach out to you if they want to get in touch with you?
Darren.Thorne at westvirginiastate.gov. Or Senate, sorry, not West Virginia State, westvirginiasenate.gov. And I'll give you my cell phone out there too, 304-359-3432.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for being available and for your service to the state. And with that, folks, remember to stay engaged, get engaged with your local politics, get engaged with your state. Don't be afraid to reach out to these guys. They're human beings. They're just like us. They love their state. They care about what's going on. They want to see things, happen that are in the best interests of our state and of its people. And they're not going to know what your concerns are if you don't reach out to them and talk to them. So, please reach out to them and talk to them. Find out who your local, your legislators are, who your senators are, who your school board, like I said, the different positions that are in the state. The only reason that we are where we are is because we don't engage enough. And if we want to see things change, we've got to engage. With that, folks, stay on the straight and narrow and keep your head up. God bless you and God bless everyone. Have a good night.
Raise some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, the time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.